center. Dr. Mosher, can you explain to the audience once again gain of function and the good reasons people try to do it, but the difficulty with it, and what do you say these things are built in labs that are man-made?
In development, Steve, the reverse genetics, it's called, is used to create viral strains that have reduced pathogenicity, but to which the immune system responds by creating antibodies against the virus. That's a good use of reverse genetics. But reverse genetics can also be used to create viral strains that are increasingly dangerous, increasingly lethal, and increasingly infectious. And that's what Dr. Shizhong Li in her P4 lab at the Wuhan Institute of Virology did. She was encouraged and working with PLA bioweapons experts and began to focus her research on this. And that's not just me talking, that's also Dr. Yen, that's also Professor Trito, of course, world-renowned scientist who now has written a book laying out exactly how this was done. Again, Dr. Shi from the P4 lab in Wuhan first solicited help from the French government, which built the P4 lab, and from the French government's Pasteur Institute, which showed her how to manipulate HIV genomes. The gene insertion method she used is called reverse genetic system 2. Using this method, she inserted an HIV segment into a coronavirus discovered in horseshoe bats to make it more infectious and lethal. That was 10 years ago. And then, of course, we moved to the United States, to the University of North Carolina, where in a lab at that university, which was on the receiving end of major grants from Dr. Fauci, they did gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function. What kind of functions are they making coronaviruses gain? They're making them more infectious and more lethal. In other words, they're creating superbugs in the lab. Now, the idea that they would create superbugs in the lab boggles the mind. Why would you ever create a dangerous, potentially lethal coronavirus in the lab that might escape from the lab? Well, the idea was we're going to create superbugs in the lab so that we can create a vaccine against it, so that we can develop therapies against it. So when the real superbug comes on the scene, we'll be ready for it. Well, that's all fun and games until you hand over the technology to the Chinese Communist Party. It gets its PLA bioweapons people in charge, and they're doing gain-of-function research to make a coronavirus that's more lethal and infectious than anything found in nature, not to develop a vaccine, not to develop therapies, but to release it on the world and cripple the world's economy, killing hundreds of thousands of people in the process. Now, that's what happened in China. That's what's happening to us right now. And, you brought up the question of why China has refused to provide the complete genome of the China virus to the World Health Organization, to the United States, or anywhere else. Dr. Trito, remember, our Italian scientist, world-renowned scientist, explains this. He said, quote, if the Chinese provided the matrix virus, that is the original virus, the source virus that they created, it would have meant admitting that SARS-CoV-2, the China virus, was created in a laboratory. In fact, he went on to say the incomplete genome made available by China lacks some inserts of AIDS amino acids, which itself is a smoking gun. So if you look at the incomplete genome of the China virus that has been provided by China, you can see that there are pieces missing that constitute a smoking gun. Now, the key question, of course, for those of us who are living through a pandemic concerns the development of a vaccine. Professor Trito on this point is not optimistic. He says, given the many mutations of the China virus, it's unlikely a single vaccine that blocks the virus will be found. Quote, at the moment, 11 different strains have been identified of the China virus. The A2A genetic line developed in Europe, the B1 genetic line, which took root in North America, are more contagious than the original strain originating in Wuhan. I therefore believe, Dr. Trito says, at most, a vaccine can be found effective on 4 or 5 strains and able to cover 70-75% of the world's population. In other words, Steve, by withholding from the world the original genetic code of the China virus that it created, in order to hide its complicity. The Chinese Communist Party is ensuring that no completely effective vaccine will ever be developed by the West. In other words, China continues to lie and people continue to die. This is yet one more nail in the coffin of the Chinese Communist Party. We need to put this political organization out of existence forever.
Stephen, real quickly, we got about a minute left. Hang on for a second, Jack. We only got a minute of Dr. Mosher. Dr. Mosher, if you were in the Oval Office today, what are the 2 or 3 things you would tell the President of the United States he has to do in confronting the Chinese Communist Party about this virus?
Well, I think we have to put the Chinese Communist Party on notice that they have a deadline, 72 hours, 96 hours. I don't care what it is. We need a deadline for them to turn over all of the records, the complete genome of the China virus, and admit to the world what they've done. Failing that, we should think about extending diplomatic recognition to Taiwan, breaking ties with the Chinese Communist Party-controlled People's Republic of China. We know what's going on in Xinjiang, in Tibet, in Outer Mongolia. We know what's going on in Hong Kong now. We know that they're developing possible invasion plans in the South China Sea vis-a-vis Taiwan or Japan. The time to the real China virus, of course, is the Chinese Communist Party itself. That's what we need to get to in order to solve.